Hey guys, if you enjoyed the videos on this channel, be sure to check out my second channel as well for funny videos and highlights. The link will be in the description. Hey guys, and welcome back everyone to another video. So with Chronicle Volume 3 published not too long ago, one of the things that was covered in the first quarter of the book was the aftermath of events following the Second War and the Sundering of Draenor. Most of these events are things that have already been covered previously in past novels and through the Warcraft games, so I won't be focusing on every single little detail within the Chronicle novel from start to finish. Instead, I'm just going to be highlighting some of the more important and interesting parts of the novel, starting with the birth of the Lich King. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get the ball on the road. With the end of the Second War and the defeat of the Orcish Horde, the Burning Legion's plans to weaken Azeroth's defense for a future invasion was thwarted. However, the races of Azeroth did little more than bide their time. Kil'jaeden, as a matter of fact, was not the least bit discouraged or deterred from their defeat. In fact, the Demon Lord learned from this an important lesson. The reason why the Horde failed to do what the Legion wished for it to do was because infighting, internal conflict, and betrayal was ripe amidst the ranks of the Orcs. This was something the Deceiver would take into consideration in future cases. It would not be his undoing again. This time, Kil'jaeden turned his attention towards a quote-unquote ally who would not have to deal with the issues of infighting and political conflict like the Horde had to. He would turn his attention towards Ner'zhul. Ner'zhul, after opening up many portals on Draenor's surface and traveling through them, wound up in the hands of Kil'jaeden, who tortured him endlessly until the Orc begged him for the peace of death. Kil'jaeden agreed, but not in the form of tranquility. Instead, Kil'jaeden transformed Ner'zhul's spirit into a spectral entity and had Deathrok, Balnazzar, Tychondris, Varimathras, and Mal'Ganis bind it into a set of enchanted armor, as well as the legendary blade known as Frostmourne. This armor set would not only serve as a means of containing Ner'zhul, but it also served as a promising reward. For Kil'jaeden promised Ner'zhul that if he were to be loyal to the Burning Legion, then the soon-to-be Lich King would soon have a newer, stronger body in which he could rule the entirety of Azeroth with. This, however, most likely was a lie, as Kil'jaeden did not intend on making good on his promise, but instead concluded that Ner'zhul would be loyal to him if he came to the Orc with promises of power rather than threats of torture. So too were Ner'zhul's followers who had accompanied him through the portal suffered a similar fate. They were tortured endlessly, but would be transformed by Kil'jaeden into the very first Liches. Thus, Ner'zhul and his followers were not only spared from eternal agony at the hands of Kil'jaeden, but their powers were also magnified 10 times over. Ner'zhul in particular had his intellect sharpened, and he began to grasp concepts of psychic powers which dwarfed the powers that he had mastered in life. Yet even though he was given these incredible powers, Ner'zhul was not loyal to the Burning Legion. He could never be, and he would never be. Not after the torture he had been through. He was loyal only to himself nowadays, and Ner'zhul sought to one day do unto Kil'jaeden what Kil'jaeden had once done unto him. Kil'jaeden then explained to Ner'zhul his plan: to have the soon-to-be Lich King develop a plague which would strip all of Azeroth of life and raise those who had fallen into loyal undead servants, servants loyal to the Burning Legion. With an incredible amount of power, the Legion conjured a portal from within the depths of the Twisting Nether into the icy lands of Northrend. Ner'zhul, contained within his icy armor inside of the icy cask, streaked across the night sky until he smashed into the frozen glaciers of Icecrown. However, he was not alone. The Dreadlords had also accompanied him, not trusting the Orc to carry out the mission by himself. While the Dreadlords began constructing fortifications around the Lich King, which were the initial architecture designs to the would-be-known Icecrown Citadel, Ner'zhul began testing his powers. He harnessed his telekinetic powers and sent them ushering outwards for miles, instantly striking terror, anarchy, and horror into the minds of the natives and subduing them under his control. Ner'zhul also discovered the rightful, who in ages past sought to subjugate the world under their heel through means of barbarism and savagery. Seeing their extremely violent-like nature, the Dragon Aspects decided to put an end to their reign of terror by conjuring a spell which caused the rightful to go into a deep, sleeping state where they would pose no threat. While they slept, the world was spared from their tyranny, and while they slept, they were defenseless against Ner'zhul. Ner'zhul had his servants slaughter the Vrykul in their sleep, adding their power to his own. Around this time, Ner'zhul also concocted the Plague of Undeath, which, with solely his will and psychic powers alone, he sent to a neighboring human settlement. Within a few days, all of the humans within this area perished and were raised into his undead servants. Their thoughts adding to his own and his powers growing well beyond what he could ever dream of amassing. But building up his strength and mastering his psychic powers was not the only thing Ner'zhul did during this time. Ner'zhul never forgot the atrocities that Kil'jaeden and the Dreadlords had done unto him, and he promised himself that he would repay them for their actions. The Dreadlords were incredibly intelligent and crafty, but compared to Ner'zhul, they were nothing. Their minds paled compared to that of the Lich King. Ner'zhul began playing the pawn and the loyal servant, deceiving them into believing that he was nothing more than an instrument of the legions, but all the while, he was listening and he was learning. Listening and learning of the strengths and weaknesses, the thrills and the fears of each and every Dreadlord. As Ner'zhul's power continuously grew, he soon came into contact with an intelligent and powerful species that would prove invaluable to add to his armadas. However, unlike the sleeping rightful and the unknowing humans, these creatures were not defenseless. The Ner'zhulians could easily detect the plague, and not only did the plague prove useless on them, but they were also masters of hit and run tactics against the undead scourge. Led by the mighty warlord known as Anub'arak, the Ner'zhulians were truly a foe to be feared. Ner'zhul concluded that the only way he can conquer the insectoid species was through means of attrition. His plague had no effect, and the Ner'zhulians were masters of the underground labyrinths, making it impossible to ambush them. The only option that was open to Ner'zhul was to smash into their defenses head on, and this actually proved incredibly effective. Each Ner'zhulian slain was the Ner'zhulian added into the ranks of the Scourge, and although it took years, many years of infighting in the War of the Spider, eventually even the mighty warlord known as Anub'arak was made a slave to Ner'zhul's will. But even though he was a slave, Anub'arak still managed to muster enough resistance to make it clearly known that he despised the Lich King, even though he could never actually sever the tie that bounded him into undead servitude. This is also a little throwback to the Arthas book, by the way, where when Arthas first encountered Anub'arak, he noticed that Anub'arak showed signs of resistance even after being enslaved into undead servitude. Ner'zhul, in fact, was so impressed by the skill of the Ner'zhulians and the resistance that their species posed, even in undeath, that Ner'zhul decided to also adopt their architectural style and even infused their ziggurats, as well as future constructed ziggurats, with magic which would cause them to soar high into the sky, easily detecting any signs of life in which to scour. Although this is only the beginning, these ziggurats would soon be a sign that would strike fear into the hearts of every single living being who laid eyes onto it. Now, the Lich King had complete control over Northrend. The icy lands of the frozen north, as well as all of its inhabitants, were subjects, loyal only to him. Kil'jaeden, the Deceiver, was incredibly pleased with the direction in which events were progressing. His experiment, the traitorous Ner'zhul, now the perceived loyal subject, was furthering the Legion's plans without delay and without falter. All enemies who dared to resist the Lich King did so at the cost of their lives, and each life stolen, each soldier fallen, was one more soldier added into the already growing ranks of the undead scourge, thereby also increasing the strength of the Burning Legion, since the Scourge was only a tool of the Legion, or so Kil'jaeden thought. Even though the Deceiver understood that Ner'zhul was not to be trusted completely and unsupervised, the Eredar Lord had greatly underestimated his subject. He believed that Ner'zhul would remain loyal to the Burning Legion at the promise of ruling Azeroth and at the prospect of obtaining a new body, that he overlooked the possibility that Ner'zhul was playing the part of the fool in order to appease to his masters so that he could take action against them when the time was right. For now, however, Ner'zhul would play along. He would follow Kil'jaeden's plan, since by doing so, he would also amass more strength. The human lands of the Eastern Kingdoms at this time were in disarray, still recovering from the economic and political hardships which were wrought from the Horde's invasion during the First and Second Wars. Distrust and infighting plagued the Alliance as factions such as Gilneas, Stromgarde, and even the High Elves withdrew from the Alliance in order to place their well-beings above the well-beings of the Alliance as a whole. This was the perfect time to strike, for not only were the kingdoms weak, but they were also completely and entirely unaware to the nearing threat of the undead scourge. Kil'jaeden now contacted Ner'zhul and told him to begin the preparations to spread the plague amongst the denizens of the eastern kingdoms. However, in order to do this, Ner'zhul needed more allies. Subjugating the Nerubians and especially Anub'arak taught the Lich King a very important lesson. Adding to his ranks those who possess powerful minds would be a great asset and a necessity for his work ahead. With his psychic abilities, Ner'zhul spread his consciousness far and wide throughout the world of Azeroth, and in doing so, the Lich King attracted the attention of many who sought to further their own powers by aligning themselves with the Lord of Undeath. Thanks so much for watching this video, guys. Be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more videos like this in the future, and until next time, I will see you all later.